What is up, guys? The UFC's first card of 2025 is in the books. And you know what? I was talking junk saying that they should have just waited for the Islam Sarukian fight. But you know what? This was a very nice warm up and hopefully a good indication as to how fights are going to look for 2025. I'm only going to go over the main card because I only do breakdowns and predictions for the main card. But let's just start with the very first one right out of the gate. Punahele Soriano defeats Urosh Medic. I thought Medic was going to get Soriano out of there. I thought he would just be the better, taller, longer, more diverse, and more complete striker over the course of that fight. I do still believe he is all of those things, but one of the reasons this is the greatest sport in the world. You get caught sleeping for 1 second, and what do you know? Boom. You get hit by a massive right hand that knocks you out in 31 seconds of the very first round. So, what can you say? Doesn't matter who I think is better overall. I chose Medic. Soriano got him out of there in the very first round with a huge right hand. So, good on him, but bad on me because I picked that one wrong. All right, moving on up the card. Christian Rodriguez defeats Austin Bashi. I got this one wrong as well. I'm 0 for 2, batting 0 for 2 for starters here. Austin Bashi, mostly a grappler. This fight went just, about like I thought it was going to, but I will say the grappling and the clinch work of Austin Bashi just wasn't enough for a grizzled veteran like Christian Rodriguez. He was able to deal with it. He was able to keep himself on the feet and keep himself separated from Austin Bashi enough to land good, significant strikes throughout the course of the fight. Austin Bashi was wearing it too. That he looked like he was getting beat up. He looked like he was getting tired there towards the end. And again, this was a unanimous decision, and it was close. It wasn't like a walkover, but he actually hands Austin Bashi his first loss. So good on him. Anytime you can give a guy his first loss, that looks good on you. So Christian Rodriguez doing his thing here at featherweight. Hey, I'm 0 for 2 so far. But either way, it was a really, really good fight. A lot of back and forth, but specifically it was Christian Rodriguez trying to, distance himself from the grappling of Austin Bashi. And, Austin Bashi did pretty well too. I just think it was his first, it's easy to be 13 and 0 when you haven't gone up against the top level guys like that you're going to meet in the UFC. This was Austin's first fight in the UFC. So it's one of those things where, you're fighting, smaller, less talented. And when I say smaller, I mean smaller time, less talented, less skilled fighters on these, smaller promotional circuits out there. And you get to the big leagues like the UFC, and you realize that you're kind of on a different playing field. You're on a different level, and Christian Rodriguez is really, really good, solid fighter, good all around game. He was kind of able to keep Austin off of him for the most part, create distance, land strikes where he needed to, put some damage on Austin, and of course he won a unanimous decision, but it was 29-28 across the board. So it wasn't like he completely ruined him. So Austin, I think, can hold his head up high and just know that, hey, I'm in the big leagues now. I got to get better. So that's what it is. So Roman Kopylov defeats Chris Curtis, and I'm telling you guys, this was a war from bell to bell, especially once it got on into the second round, third round. Gotta admit, I thought I was going to get this wrong. I picked Roman Kopylov to win. I thought Chris Curtis was about to get him out of there. Man, Kopylov was bleeding. I mean, he was cut. I mean, at least once, maybe a couple of times on his face. I mean, it looked like a horror movie in there. And Chris Curtis, that boxing was on full display. To be honest, I was a little bit surprised. I thought the fight IQ of Roman Kopylov could have been better in this situation. I mean, it worked out in his favor. Obviously, he won the fight with 1 second to go, basically, but he did a lot more kind of standing in the pocket and banging and kind of getting into a phone booth firefight sort of battle with Chris Curtis. And I said that if they got into this close quarter, phone booth type fighting where they're in the pocket, that I felt like Chris Curtis was going to have an advantage, and he did. He did. He was piecing Roman Kopylov up quite a bit, and like I said, Kopylov was wearing the damage. I mean, Kopylov was landing his own shots, significant strikes for sure, and they both hurt each other a couple of times throughout the fight. Kopylov hurt Chris Curtis a couple of times towards the end. On into the second and third round, this just became an all-out dogfight, man, and these guys were going after it. The last 60 seconds of that fight, they get in the last 5, 6 seconds. Roman Kopylov lands his, I think it was a left high kick. Let me look and see. Yeah, it doesn't say whether it's left or right, but it lands a high kick. Chris Curtis goes down with maybe 5 seconds to go. Kopylov didn't even follow him to the canvas. He literally, for him, it was like he wasn't going to follow up. He knew the bell was about to ring. I think it was just a walk off, not a walk off KO per se, but then again, you know, Chris Curtis was on his knees, in Never Never Land. He didn't really even know where he was, and the ref kind of followed him down. But then Kopylov didn't follow Chris Curtis. So it finally got to about 1 second, and then Mark Smith weighs it off. I'm like, what? I mean, granted, if he would have followed him, he won that fight. Chris Curtis was, he didn't know where he was. He was on cloud 700. He didn't know where he was at the time. So absolutely, Roman Kopylov deserves the win and should have won the fight, but just a really weird ending, like an interesting sort of ending because, you know, technically, I mean, knocked him down. He had him hurt, but he didn't follow him to the mat. And then there was no subsequent damage after that. So it just kind of surprised me that I guess maybe because Curtis didn't stand back up within the time of the bell, or I guess because he didn't stand back up immediately. And I guess Mark Smith determined that he was out of it. That was going to be it. So not sure what the thought process was behind that for Mark Smith, really. But hey, either way, what a fight! What a war, man! I hope those guys got fight of the night. Huge, huge fight. Lots of fun. Lots of back and forth. Lots of beautiful striking. Good body shots from Chris Curtis. Good overhand rights in the pocket from Kopylov. I mean, they were just going at it. Really, really, really fun fight to start out 2025. And of course, a shocking ending. I mean, very, very Justin Gagey, Max Holloway esque. Is the best way to put it. Very, very shocking the way that ended. But hey, I got that pick right. Roman Kopylov defeats Chris Curtis. TKO high kick, 4 minutes and 59 seconds of the third round, guys. 1 second left in the fight. Mark Smith waves it off. It is what it is. All right, moving on up the card. Cesar Almeida defeats Abdul Razak Alasan. Listen, this is another one that I was getting concerned that I was going to get this wrong. I picked Cesar Almeida. I thought he would be able to stay away because, Alasan's one of those guys that just throws heavy, heavy heat like he's trying to hit it out of the park every time he swings. And it was no different tonight. The thing is, Cesar Almeida looked like he came in there a little bit flat footed. Like, I think some of these guys get so used to sparring and just kind of light sparring and stuff like that. And then sometimes they get in the cage. And when the lights are on, and especially at the Apex, where there's not really a crowd too, I think sometimes they kind of get lulled into just like, I'm just going through the motions. Yeah, we're going to feel each other out, kind of slow moving. It's going to take us a minute to kind of get into it. And then, bam! All of a sudden they get hit with something where they're like, whoa, holy shit, back to reality. I'm in a real fight here. And I think that's what happened with Cesar Almeida. He has a glory kickboxing background. I felt pretty sure Cesar Almeida was probably a better technical striker, and I do still feel that way, but Alasan had him hurt. I mean, he had him hurt in a big way a couple of times. He dropped him one time, I know. And then in the finishing sequence there, which was in the very first round, he had Alisson had Almeida on skates. It was one of those where it was just a formality. I was just waiting for the ref, either Almeida to fall or for the ref to come in and wave it off, because Almeida, you just knew it was going to happen any second. Almeida was really, really hurt. Again, Alisson being one of those guys that comes in, he's one of those guys that comes in windmilling sometimes. He gets a little bit too excited. He knew he had Almeida hurt. He was looking for that devastating knockout, that one knockout punch. But the problem is, when you are a guy who fights, lives, and when you live by the sword like that, sometimes you will die by the sword like that. And if you're a guy that's going to start way out here to throw a punch because you're trying to knock a guy's jaw into last week, a guy like, see, I mean, this reminds me so much of like Alex Pereira, these glory kickboxing guys. They keep things so technical, so tight, and so he had him hurt. He kind of had him on the run in a way, but you can't go in there just swinging wildly with a guy like Cesar Almeida, because if he sees, all he needs is one split second to see that you're overshooting, overswinging, or just a little bit out of position, and he is going to catch you. And that's exactly what happened. In between one of Alisson's big overhand rights, Almeida threw a short, quick, precise, boom, left hook, literally knocked Alisson straight back. He fell straight back. His back and his head hit the canvas at the same time. He was out. And he was hurt pretty bad too, to a point where when they announced Almeida as the winner, Alisson was nowhere to be found. So I don't think they like took him out on a stretcher or anything, but he was still hurt because he didn't even stand up there when they actually named Almeida as the winner. So I didn't actually pick it to go down that way. I thought that would go to a decision, so it didn't actually happen the way I thought it would. But I did pick Almeida to win that fight. So yeah, so I'm 2 for 2 at this point on the main card. So the main event. No, I'm sorry. We're not there yet. Uh, Santiago Poncinibio versus Carlston Harris, excuse me. This one kind of surprised me, okay? And I should have given Carlston Harris a little more credit. He has a lot more power in his hands than I thought he did. I was right in the way that he throws his punches is a little weird. He has a way of, I don't know, man. It's weird. Like he throws like this, like he's hitting with, instead of this part of his hand, he's hitting like with this part of his hand. I think it's just, I don't know. I think he hasn't ever really been trained the exact correct way to punch, maybe. With that said, he caught Ponzinibbio several times, and Harris is one of those guys that, being a slender guy, he does kind of have deceiving power. I said that Ponzinibbio is a big, kind of strong guy for that division, and I felt like he was going to be able to shuck off the takedowns in the clinch by Harris. That turned out to be true. I think that's what ended up winning Ponzinibbio this fight. Devastating leg kicks from Ponzinibbio, caught him several times, but hey, to Harris's credit, man, he hung in there and he actually hurt Ponzinibbio a couple of times. I know he dropped him at least once or twice in that fight. I was getting scared that I was going to get that pick wrong too, because I did pick Ponzinibbio to win the fight, and I did say that he would probably get him out of there somewhere in the third round. Turns out I called this one right on time. TKO strikes round 3 by Ponzinibbio. So Ponzinibbio picks up a win. He was really wanting that. He's lost, I think, 3 out of his last 4 fights. So I think he was not going to be denied against Carlston Harris tonight. So, but hey, I give Carlston Harris credit. He's a better striker, a more effective striker, and he has more power than I gave him credit for. I did not expect him to be able to hurt Ponzinibbio the way he did. And if Ponzinibbio was any lesser of a fighter, if he didn't have such a good chin and was one of those guys that can get knocked down twice in a round and get back up and still come at you, if he would have been any lesser of an opponent, I think Harris could have got him out of there. But Ponzinibbio is a tough character, veteran. He's got, I think, 38. That was probably his 39th overall MMA fight. So grizzled veteran. He was able to hang in there, and finally he got Harris out of there. He kept catching him with right hands. Eventually, Harris just was on Queer Street, and finally the ref jumped in there and stopped it. The main event. Listen, it's why I always say you shouldn't put Dern and Hebus on a main event. I was talking shit about that. I was probably talking too much shit because you have a huge, massive undercard with repeated knockouts and shocker value type knockouts as well. The last thing you want to do is see a couple of chicks roll around for 5 rounds and just roll around on top of each other. Look, I got to give credit where credit is due. Mackenzie Dern, being a jiu-jitsu specialist, did a good job of dragging Amanda Hebus into her world. When they fought 5 years ago, Dern was not able to get Hebus to the ground and keep her there. Now, I will say, I think that this in part was a low octagon IQ night for Hebus. I thought that she was way too happy, way too content to go down to the ground and play jiu-jitsu with a really high-level jiu-jitsu person like Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern, there's black belt jiu-jitsu, and then there's Mackenzie Dern black belt jiu-jitsu. It's kind of like the equivalent of the men. They say, oh, this guy's, like Moicano and Dariush next week. There's Moicano black belt jiu-jitsu, but then there's Dariush level jiu-jitsu, like 8-time world champion jiu-jitsu level, and that's kind of what we saw here between Dern and Hebus. I thought Hebus should not have followed her to the ground the way she did. And there were times where she could have stood up, got out of that, instead of being content to be on the ground with Mackenzie Dern. With that said, a lot of back and forth, lots of switches in positions, lots of high level grappling. I mean, Mackenzie Dern, that finishing sequence where she got Hebus in that armbar was just utterly jaw dropping. I mean, amazing jiu-jitsu by her. And if you're a person who really loves a good, high level jiu-jitsu back and forth, that's what this was. That's what this was. It's not my favorite aspect of the game, even though I am, formerly a jiu-jitsu guy. I love to watch people stand and bang. I just think it's more exciting, and I still think that. But as far as exciting as jiu-jitsu matches can go, this was pretty exciting. Okay, I will say Amanda Hebus, her key to victory in that very first fight that they had 5 years ago was her striking. She still had that advantage tonight. It was obvious. I mean, listen, I know Michael Bisping and Dominique Cruz, it's their job. They're UFC shields. They work for the UFC. It's their job to build up, Mackenzie Dern with Jason Perillo's really been working on her striking. He's got her right. The improvement of her striking is this and that and the third and blah, 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 blah. And then she still is throwing wild overhand rights with her right foot forward. Come on, guy. I mean, you can just tell by watching her. I think she's just one of those chicks. She might look good on the pads, okay, but when she gets in there to those fights, her it's just all off. Just her striking, just nothing is ever really right with her striking, to be honest. And I think a lot of it has to do with it. She's just become so dependent and heavily dependent on her phenomenal jiu-jitsu game. I think she's always got in the back of her mind, even when she's striking, it's in the back of her mind. How can I get this to the ground where I know I'm the best, where I know I can do what she did tonight, right? Going from one submission to another, to another, to another, until finally sitting on her chest, locking up that arm. I mean, she had that arm isolated for a good 60 seconds or so before she ever got up on the side and then dropped down into that arm bar. She had been setting that up for minutes and minutes and minutes. Mackenzie Dern's jiu-jitsu was several steps ahead of Ribas. I mean, so much more offensive, so much more active. You know, when Dern was on top, Ribas was just basically trying to hold on to her, trying to minimize the damage, trying to mitigate the damage as much as possible, not doing anything offensive, just trying to kind of stay safe. And you can see a difference immediately when Mackenzie Dern was on the bottom and when she started playing jiu-jitsu. I mean, complete offense. And the thing is, the way she chains, her jiu-jitsu offense together from this to that and then to that, and then she's threatening the triangle, and then she uses that to roll up to the top, and then she slides to right, and then she drops down to an armbar. Uh, she's a chess player when it comes to jiu-jitsu. So there's black belt level jiu-jitsu, and there's Mackenzie Dern black belt level jiu-jitsu, and I think that's what we saw tonight. I chose Ribas to win this again. I'm happy for Dern. I know she wanted to make that a 1-1 sort of thing because she did lose the first one. But again, Ribas still is a much better striker. And you saw that tonight. So I think Ribas, one of the biggest mistakes she made in this fight is being willing to follow Mackenzie Dern to the ground. Don't know why she did it. Maybe she thought she could, hang with her down there so that she could make a better account of herself. Not sure why, but she did, and she paid for it because it's only a matter of time. If you're on the ground with somebody like that for long enough, they're gonna get a few steps ahead of you. She stayed a few steps ahead of her, and the thing is, Mackenzie Dern was already planning C by the time Ribas was thinking about A and B. So she was just ahead of her, and it showed, and her jiu-jitsu was just levels above. So hey, good on her. My bad for talking too much junk. I didn't mean to talk so much junk about the main event. The first one was kind of trashy, and my laptop just went dark on me. So I think that's a good time for me to get on up out of here and go to bed. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the fight. Subscribe to the channel if you would, like the video. Comment down below. I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, guys. Peace.